Yeah,
That's a fine looking background there. I wish I had a library like that.
yes, yes. There's a story behind that. We our district deputy for research lodges has a actual library behind him, and he made a point of telling us he had the Dewey Decimal System that he uses for his own books. And so I was determined to show him up. So I went and found a picture of the Library of Alexandria. It's like, wow, check out my library then, bro. There you go.
Well, one-upmanship, I see.
Yes.
The one thing I'd like to do, if we've got just a few minutes, is I have got a Death by PowerPoint.
Yes.
That is optional. I normally don't need to use it.
No, we do like PowerPoint, so it gives some people stuff to look at. So you're welcome to. You got permission to share.
Right. So what I need to do is share the screen.
Yeah, go ahead and throw that up there and practice.
So that's it, but that's not the slideshow. So I just need to go into
hit the slideshow. Down at the bottom. Down at the bottom to the left of the scale. There you go. Oh, you can go from there.
Try it. Not now. What is it? There you go. Yeah, is it? Oh. So that's the full screen, isn't it?
Yeah, let's get rid of all the warning messages now.
Yeah. So now to go back to the screen, stop share.
That's it. Yep.
There. Okay. So we're ready to go then.
Excellent. I come on like 15 minutes early to give people time to sign in, and we try to start around 10, but depends. Sometimes the speaker's not there yet, and what all. So we.
So the presentation I've got is about the book I wrote on the English Illuminati, which I will lead into. But that's not, that's only part of me. There's, I think it's because I'm a Rosicrucian Freemason, and I got the impression that you wanted an insight as to what that means to me and how relevant that might be to people today.
Yeah, what I'm looking for, if you already have a presentation, I'm sure, but I'm trying to find where people have said that the Rosicrucians were involved in the start of Masonry and vice versa. That we have a common thread of origin, and that's something I wanted to delve into. If you can illuminate that.
Yeah, no, that's not the start of Freemasonry.
Right. Okay. Whatever they were in our origins, whether it's the start of the Grand Lodge system or something, there was something I've heard that if there wasn't for the Rosicrucians, we wouldn't have had Grand Lodges, something like that. I was like, really? I mean, I know there's overlap, but how much of a tie-in, I wasn't sure. So, anything you add about the origins would be great.
Okay, I'll give while I'm in the next 10 minutes, I'll get my head around some of that, but you did mention it, and equally just as prepared to do that as well.
Cool.
So I'll go quiet and have a look at me source dates.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate you being flexible. How long is your talk?
20 minutes is normally all people can take, so I'll aim to do the talking bit then, but obviously there to answer any questions for as long as.
Right. Now, I'm trying to, because I've been doing the YouTube thing for a while and I've been chatting with some other brothers who are more into digital media and all trying to basically up our game. And they're saying, because we do their Zoom meetings, and of course anyone can attend, but we also put them out on YouTube for people to watch later. And typically these meetings run about an hour and a half to 2 hours with all the Q&A and all the chit chat. And I whittle them down a little, but this one fellow was saying, if people don't watch more than 10 or 15 minutes on YouTube, and if I could get a speaker to say, if you have a 30-minute talk, and get our speakers to say, break it up into like 10-minute segments. So talk for 10 minutes, pause, do some Q&A, and then start the next segment, do the Q&A. And that way it's easier to edit later and put them out as like 10 to 15-minute videos. Now, I'm not going to spring that on you right now, but it's something I'm looking to do.
Hey, I'm one of those people just like you that probably, 5 minutes notice and I can talk for 20 minutes on anything.
Yes.
So you have to get down to 10 minutes is just fine.
Okay. Well, if possible, if you have a pause, you could hit it 10 minutes in. we could try that.
I'm all set now for the beginning of Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry. So that's how long that took to set up.
Okay, good.
So I'll start with that and bring in all the other pieces as well.
Okay.
I mean, have you seen my book?
I have not. No.
No. Okay. So it was about finding some documents in our archives, which I'll refer to a couple of times. Okay. And it kind of has the whole of our archives, and our library has the history of the whole of the Western esoteric situation and all the different orders that go on there. Okay. And I just happened to find this one book on the Illuminati written by William Westcott, who's a reasonably well-known Freemason. Mm-hmm. And I wrote a book on it. And then several years later was approached by The Real Thing. They exist. Okay. Yeah. No. So my book 3 is going to be co-written by the existing members of the Illuminati who exist in Germany.
I know there are a lot of scammers out there who claim to be the Illuminati, and I have to deal with their mess all the time. So how did you verify those are actual Illuminati people and not just pretenders, basically?
Well, there's a lot of pretenders going on, and at least 2 of the organizations in England that are offering the Illuminati rituals to members are well known to me, and they asked me for my rituals. So I found all the rituals. Okay. And essentially and I've been out to Germany and met these people. And the answer to your question is, although it's been a great secret, they are revealing that they are or have belonged to probably the oldest Grand Lodge in Germany, which is the Lodge of the Three Globes. Okay. So the real ones are associated with Germany's greatest. Can I carry on talking? You're getting people to join. But so yes, and yes. So I've been warranted by one of those people, and they truly are still secret. But also the Gold and Rosicrucians have carried on in Germany too, and many of these Illuminati members are member of that organization. But they are very secret. They're very small, and in Europe and in America, people are being offered the Illuminati rituals via the Wages book.
Let me go and say hi to some people here, Robert. Brian,
I'll stop now. I'll stop now. That's fine.
Good afternoon to you, Brian.
Good morning, Chris.
Good to see you. And our worshipful master is here. Hello, Brother Robert. Good to have you with us.
Morning. Morning, Robert.
Yes. He's not on mute, but he's deep in thought.
As you'd expect.
Yes. Alistair, Brian's been my lovely co-host, my Ed McMahon, for the last 3 years here.
Hello, Brian.
Hello, Alistair.
Is that the Cornwall Cross behind you, or some other order that I'm unaware of?
It is St. Perrin's Cross, yeah.
Okay.
And Brother Rick,
obviously gives you a rough idea where I'm from, or where I am.
Yes.
Where are you from, Brian?
Cornwall.
Oh, you are from Cornwall.
Yes.
I say it's St. Perrin's Cross.
well, yes, and one of our Rosicrucian brethren of olden times landed in Cornwall, in Plymouth, and there's a statue to him. And he got his family got very involved with Charles II when he landed. I'm very bad at pronouncing names that I haven't practiced before. But anyway, yeah, so Cornwall is included very much in the sort of Rosicrucian age-old stuff, which is quite of interest, but probably not for this particular talk.
Well, we can always bring you back. If you're well received. I think, Brian, there's only been like 2 speakers where I've said, I don't think we'll call him again. Virtually all of our speakers are impressive. I mean, it you don't have to. I mean, it's a, to be honest, it's a low bar. It is, but I mean, we do have a lot of speakers, and it's at all interesting, and we're happy to have them back. There's only a couple of fellows where it's like, I don't know. They went on at great length about things that were totally unrelated, and I don't know.
Well,
we're very receptive here.
Well, Chris and Brian, one of the things to say to me is, what is the interest of your members, and I'll talk to that interest. I mean,
right?
I don't want. It's very easy to have a general thing, which you have to fall back on something, and I've got lots to fall back on. But yeah, I'm just looking. Here he is. Yes. Now.
Oh, I wanted to say hi to Robert, and he was
hello.
His audio. Hey, good to see you, brother. It's been like 4 days. So good. No, wait, it has been a full week. We just had our in-person meeting last Saturday, so it was good to see you. I generally only see Robert in person 4 times a year, so good to see you again, sir. So soon.
Good to be seen.
Absolutely, better seen than viewed. Absolutely.
Yes.
And morning, Brother Rowe. Good to see you again. And Brian, I did make you a co-host.
Yep.
If you hadn't noticed. And Brother Jose, who's signing in, I think he's with us. If you want to unmute and say hello. Jose signed up for our papers and asked about when the next meeting was, and I said, "Well, it's in the email I just sent you." And then I found the email from him asking me to add it to the papers, and I realized I hadn't added him to the list. So I'm telling him, go look at the email I sent you when I hadn't sent him an email. So sorry about that, Jose. But I got him squared away, and he's in our list now, and hopefully he's and he really was interested in coming here today. So want to make sure I noted him. Alistair, we get anywhere from 10 to well, our high watermark was 60, but generally we have 10 to 20 attendees every Zoom meeting. So we do have some frequent flyers who are here for most of them, like Kurt, who's coming in now. I try to take note over the years of I'm looking at the metrics of how many people come and note the ones who are here regularly and all. But it's like we're slowly building something here, but I feel like we're still in the starting stages, although we've been doing this for like 3 years now. So how you doing, Kurt?
Pretty good, Chris. How are you?
Good to have you with us again.
Good to be here.
So coming back to dear Brian and Cornwall.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. In 1600, Theodore Palaiologos landed.
Oh, Teddy.
And his family were allegedly related to Constantine, and the Greek Constantinian family claim that he and his descendants are those people. And Prince Rosicrucian tried in vain to be acknowledged as the prince of the Constantine line, but Queen Victoria had other ideas and married one of her daughters off to the king of Bohemia, not Bohemia, no, the other place. Anyway, and it's a very interesting story. So yeah, I've got lots on that. Over.
Good. Brother Alan, good to have you with us on the road again. I see.
Hello.
Hello, Alan.
Yes, always on the road, but
And Brother Michael, good to have you with us. Becoming a regular attendee.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
He's
morning.
racking up points as a semi-regular attendee now. It's great. And Jose still hasn't unmuted and said hello. I thought he'd at least say hello here, but that's quite all right.
Hey, brothers, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I'm kind of distracted. I apologize. I'll be right there with you.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right. I know how it is. People, some people sign on, but they're not actually on yet. That's why they have their cameras off generally, and that's fine. Oh, and Kurt, in going through my old earlier, I meant to tell you the fellow's name. I found the guy who I mistook for you. You did kind of look similar, and his house, he's like in the attic, so there's like a peaked roof above his head where he's sitting. And it's like, I thought that was you because he attended regularly for like a year straight. And then you started coming on. And at one point I asked you, it's like, oh yeah, you've been here a long time. It's like, no, for some reason I mistook you for him, but his room always had like dark blue walls. Anyway, when I was cleaning up earlier videos, I'm like, that's the guy I thought was Kurt. But he's also from Michigan, Wisconsin, that neck of the woods too. So I guess I just confused you all. But anyway.
We're often grouped together.
Yep. Yeah. All you Swedes and Norwegian types and all. Yeah, there was some comic was joking about how when the Norwegians came to America, for some reason, all of their wagons, like shopping carts, they tilted right. So the further they went into America, the more north and north and north they went when they're trying to go west. And they end up around Lake Michigan and say, this is cold and miserable enough. It's just like home. We'll stay.
That could explain a lot. Yeah. Most of us know in January are going, why?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's after 10 o'clock, so let me go do the official thing. Greetings, everyone. My name is Chris Douglas. I am the Senior Warden of Virginia Research Lodge number 1777 in Highland Springs, Virginia. And this is our semi-monthly, bi-weekly, when I feel like getting a speaker kind of unstated meeting here online and hosted by Virginia Research Lodge. And I'll put some links in the chat if you're not already familiar. First is a link to our Facebook group, and you're more than welcome to join us on Facebook. We have our research papers there I post every week, as well as events like this one and other interesting Masonic education things that come our way. Next is our lodge website where we host all of our papers and have other things. And then a link to our YouTube channel where these meetings are posted. And if you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We like having subscribers. And finally, my email address, if you're not on Facebook and you want to contact me about getting on the research paper mailing list, you can either reach me on Facebook or email me direct. So that is our lineup. Let's see. I did want to bring something to everybody's attention if I could, just for a second. Bear with me. Oh, where did I do it? I have some sad news. Where are you at, John? I'm going to go and share with everybody. We have a long time. I'm going to go and share here real quick. Share. Yeah. This is Brother John Edward Hughes. He was a longtime attendee of our Zoom meetings, and he passed away in March. I just found out about it a couple of weeks ago. But John here attended over 27 meetings of these Zoom meetings we've had. So he's attended, I think, half of them. I think almost as many as Brian has. Well, Brian's been to all of them, I'm pretty sure, almost virtually all. But John, very long-term attendee. He was a member of a number of Masonic groups, and we always enjoyed having him with us. Where was he from, Brian? Do you recall?
I cannot honestly remember.
Okay.
It was this side of the pond, but apart from that, I think he was Middle England somewhere, but
okay.
I really don't know.
And like I said, he was a member of a whole slew of other Masonic organizations. I was like, I joked him because when he's on Facebook or he's on the Zoom and he's like this, because he's got a screen this way, and then I have to make him turn and face us to say hello. But we'd watch him watch us on a monitor over this way, so we're more used to his profile. Anyway, but Brother John Hughes, you will be missed. I did want to call attention to that because, like I said, he's probably in the top 3 or 4 people of attendees for these Zoom meetings over the years, and it was really nice to have him here. And we will miss him. And we're only doing this 3 years. I know we all lose brothers in lodge, and some we know really well, and some were 50-year members, and no one there knows them, but they were members, so we recognize them when they pass. But this is the first time I know of someone who's a regular attendee to these meetings that has passed on. So I wanted to make note of that for John's sake. So our best wishes to his family. So anybody have anything they want to announce and talk about before we go to our speaker? Anyone? Okay.
Yes, if you allow me, I would like to
Please.
share something.
If you wanna go on camera and we can see you. There you are.
Thank you very much. I'm so
Hello,
not
Jose.
presentable today. Thank you very
That's
much,
all right.
brothers from all over the world. Well, I'm really proud to say that my oldest daughter, Natalia Revolio, she's the honor queen of our Bethel #1 around here, the District 1 of Virginia.
Excellent.
Bethel #1. And she's doing really great job. I just saw her, and how what I love about it is how she's developed a way to communicate and talk in public. I'm the kind of Mason who wouldn't never encourage your daughter because I am a Mason for her to be a Bethel. But you know what? She did it on her own. I know some Masons that say, "Hey, I am a Mason. You need to be Job's daughters because of I am a master." Blah blah blah. I never did that. Nevertheless, now I want to say I'm so proud to have this daughter of mine being the honor queen of Bethel #1 in the state of Virginia. So representative of whatever she's doing, and well, that's what I wanted to communicate to you, brothers, share it with you,
Brilliant.
and say that yes, indeed, it works fine. It made her a lady that can talk in public and communicate in a crowd, having herself confidence about whatever she's saying. Loving it.
Excellent.
That's what
Thank
I wanted
you,
to
Jose.
share.
I will say this, Jose. I was in D Malay, which brought me to Masonry. So I've always been a firm supporter of our youth groups. I think they're very important, and they teach life lessons in the same way that Masonry does, and in some ways, actually, I think better than Masonry does. So we owe it to our youth to offer them opportunities to be in groups like this that teach them about character, teach them about leadership, teach them how to deal with other people, and it encourage their faith. And there's a much more Christian bent, especially in the Jobies and the Rainbow, not so much in the D Malay. I mean, these are American youth groups, but they're open to any young person who believes in God and wants to is of good character. So I can always recommend the youth groups. We always support them as much as we can. So glad to hear that. Hello, brother Tony, and hello, Amber, who are joining us. If you want to say hello before we get started here. Or not. Okay. Robert, I hope one day we get to the point where we have so many people come in, I don't have the chance to actually say hello to every single person who joins and give them a chance to speak. But that's one advantage of having a small group, is everyone at least say hello and I'll greet them. But I'd love it if this is a much bigger operation, but at least when it's a small group, I can say hi. And Amber gave up. Okay. All right, then. If there's nothing else. So, Alistair, are you up for my idea about, I know I sprung it on you there when we started talking about doing like a 10-minute segment and then breaking? Are you willing to go with the flow and try that?
Absolutely. The one thing I wanted to try and do is keep the audience.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we're looking at 2 10-minute segments then? Is that your plan?
Yes, so okay. I'm going to start off with Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry, a bit of a historical thing, and then probably lead into some new exciting stuff to me anyway, and take it from there.
Very good. Okay, well, with no further ado, and because we are so unscripted and off the cuff, I will let Brother Alistair introduce himself and announce however many Masonic things he belongs to. Don't have to name them all, but just give yourself an introduction and then take it away, Alistair.
Well, I'm going to not do that because I belong to so many different things. It's boring and I don't think it achieves anything at all. Really, I'm just an enthusiast. I've been interested in the esoteric side of everything long before I became a Freemason. And once I became a Freemason, I realized that I'd been studying Rosicrucianism for years and years before ever becoming a Freemason, and had many books from Rosicrucian authors already on my shelves, and then was eventually allowed to join the Rosicrucian Freemasons in England. And they're shortened to SRIA, Societe Rosicruciana in Anglia, so Anglia standing for England. And I'm great friends with the Scottish crowd, and the American organization, and around the world. But I'm not here to plug any organization. I'm just going to go straight from saying that to say, well, let me ask a question. Is there a doctor out there? Are any of you medical doctors?
Not me.
No is the answer to that. Let's say there was one. Christopher, let's say
that's Dr. Douglas to you. Yes.
That you're Dr. Douglas, and you are well known in your community for being a doctor and curing people's health. But people found out that you were also interested in astrology. In the 16th century, Christopher, you'd have been called a Rosicrucian. Okay? And what are Rosicrucians? In my opinion, the basic level is they are people that looked at a science, let's say chemistry. They looked at chemistry and rationalized it into the science, the historical stuff, the absolute nonsense, and the myth. They were people who were able to look at something and create out of it, in those early days, the sciences that we know today and many of the myths of the century. So a Rosicrucian rationalized something, and they were normally educated, but they realized that the secret to having a good, healthy community is education, and education was key. And so it was important for these intelligent men to try and start educating generally people for free. It took many years, but that's kind of what I think a Rosicrucian is. I mean, I can trace them back to the Hermetic Society of the Ptolemies in Egypt, which was sort of 300 BC all the way up until Cleopatra killed herself. But when it comes to Freemasonry, I was having an interesting conversation in United Grand Lodge Library Museum with the director there. And she's saying, Alistair, something of what you just said makes perfect sense. When it comes to when did Freemasonry, as we know it today, Freemasonry, when did I start collecting material in our library on Freemasonry? She said, if you draw a graph, and the graph over time of how much information they had, it goes back and back and back in time, and suddenly there is a cliff drop. And that cliff drop, she said, is exactly around the time you talked about. It's between 1630 and 1640. And I'd been talking about Harry Carr, a very famous English Freemason who's written many very, very good books. And he was saying that in the transition from operative to speculative Freemasonry occurred between 1630 and 1640. And she said, I completely agree. You know, doing the mental math, that is when we started to get esoteric type of symbolism in Freemasonry on record. And what I was talking about was Robert Flood, an English doctor who printed a load of his books. And in our library, we have about 4 first editions of some of Robert Flood's books. And in 1833, he wrote his reply to somebody who was talking about how the Rosicrucian movement had been disrespectful and taken people's money, and that the whole myth of Christian Rosenkreuz was a complete hoax. And he was replying to them and saying, well, actually, these people have amongst them the chosen, have amongst them people that spiritualize on the building of the temple of inner nature, man's nature, in their hearts without using any metal implements. And it's a very famous quote. I've completely misquoted it, but I wasn't prepared for it. So in 1633, somebody well known of being a Rosicrucian, and I can come on to that in a minute, started using the term Free-Mason to describe what his Rosicrucians, the Rosicrucians that knew and had rationalized and really knew what was going on, as opposed to these hoaxers that were taking people's money after the Rosicrucian manifestos, which were launched in 1614. But please don't think that's when Freemasonry and Rosicrucian had their first link. I'm just going to go back to where I was before, and again, there was don't do that. There was a document found by Matthew Cook, which is well known as the. How did it get to that? So Matthew Cook. That's trying to be too clever. I do it off the top of my head. Matthew Cook found a document which was called the Cook Manuscript, and originally he said it was founded in 1450. It's since been redated as about 1468, off the top of my head. And it's about this time that we hear about the first organization of Rosicrucians as well, or people interested from the Rose and Cross, not necessarily Rosicrucians. So the earliest English rituals that are kind of speculative are dated in that date of 1450, let's say. Let's come to an accommodation there. And at the same time, there were orders of Rose and Cross in Germany. So that is roughly two dates for you. A date when in England we have material on speculative Masons starting in around 1630 to 1640. Robert Flood saying in 1633 that he didn't want to be called a Rosicrucian anymore. He wanted them to be called enlightened ones, but thought that wasn't any good. So he said, no, we'll call ourselves Free Masons, who build the temple of nature in our heart without using material, and the cornerstone is Christ. So there's your two dates. I shall now pause and ask for questions.
Thank you. All right, any questions from everyone?
When did you say Robert Flood wrote that? Did you say 1633?
Correct.
Okay.
I can quote you from the document. I can show it to you on screen if my search engine will work as well, but it didn't.
That's quite all right.
1633. It's his apology to. I could probably. I'll see if I can find it. Control find 1633. Robert Flood in the. It was his Clavis Philosophica Alchemica Fludius, his final answer to Merzion, Lavonius, and Gazzadeni. You might notice that I'm rubbish at pronouncing anything I haven't practiced. And the actual quote, if you are interested, what rock and what building, said Flood? A spiritual rock and a building of human nature in which men are the stones and Christ the cornerstone. But how shall stones move and arrange themselves into a building? They must become living stones, said Flood. But what is a living stone? A living stone is a mason who builds himself up into the wall as part of the temple of human nature. In these passages, we see the rise of the allegorical name of Masons. The society was, therefore, a Masonic society in order to represent typically that temple of the Holy Ghost, which it was their business to erect in the spirit of man. End of quote.
That sounds very familiar. I wanted to call attention to this, more of a comment than a question, but you mentioned that the term free-masons came about to distinguish legitimate Masons from hoaxers, because clearly there are a lot of hoaxers out there. this harkens back to our discussion before the meeting started here, Alistair, where we were talking about the Illuminati, and you claim you've actually spoken to real, actual Illuminati with rituals and meetings that actually meet in the same manner we do, which is similar to the Illuminati that we all believe died out. And I point out that the majority of the people you meet online are hoaxsters claiming to be in the Illuminati. And I'll point out the minute I ask them a question like, what lodge do you attend? And what sort of regalia do you wear? And what are the names of your officers? And when do you meet? And what's the name of your lodge? They can't answer a single question. And then I hit them with, why is it, if the Illuminati is such a great organization I need to join, why do I see you stealing pictures of Masons off of their Facebook pages and passing them off as you? If the Illuminati is this great group, I want to check out your regalia. I want to see what sort of regalia and such, and what you wear, because I'm curious if there is a real Illuminati group. Show me what you wear. Why do you insist on stealing our pictures, our images, and saying here's us when clearly it's not? So
it's kind of a good question. When I was doing my research for the book I wrote called The English Illuminati, this is Codex Magica by whatever his name is, Tex Mars. 1,000 images of the Illuminati, and I've been through every one of those 1,000 images, and not one of them is a genuine Illuminati image. Not one.
Okay then.
And so I collected a number of books on the subject as I was writing my book. To quickly explain, so in the SRIA, I have for 10 years been the Director General of Studies across the world, and we've held what we call the Metropolitan Study Group in London for the 33 years I've been a member. And only for the last 10 years have we added Zoom, and it hasn't been as great a success, and we're trying to do more practical things during those meetings, and we held those meetings once a month. So where I come from is a situation where I helped log or record the library of 2,000 books worth over £1.5 million. I mean, I can hold 4 books in my hand and they'll be worth £100,000.
Oh.
Yeah. And I took these on a tour of Europe to our colleges in different parts of Europe to explain in physical book form, this is how Rosicrucianism began. Essentially, our members have donated for nothing. They found these books and they've put them in our library. And they start with, people like Robert Flood, and all of Michael Mayer. He founded a Rosicrucian society, and we've actually got a cross that was allegedly Robert Flood's cross as Grand Master of Michael Mayer's German society, that was passed on to his successor, who I can't remember off the top of my head. It'll come to me, but Sir Ian Hall was the current owner of this, what they call the Flood Cross, and he exhibited it in one of our colleges in 1910. We only have the photocopies. I've been in touch with the family trying to find it, but even the family don't know where it is. Slight diversion, but the library that we have turned up a book. When I was helping a valuer value the library, I was there to sort of tell him what these books were and the significance so he could value them. And one of them was a book written by William Westcott in his own handwriting. So a handwritten book called The History of the Illuminati. As part of what I was doing as Director General of Studies was lecturing on Westcott, and Westcott produced about 200 papers, and I knew every one of them. And I knew for a fact that he never lectured or talked about the Illuminati in his 36 years as the Supreme Magus of the Society. So I thought this is a very interesting thing. And I borrowed it and took it home, read it in the train, and thought, what a lovely, lovely history of the Illuminati. I'd only ever known about the Illuminati through the films of Dan Brown and all the nonsense. Essentially, 2 books created the fake news about the Illuminati, and I could go into them. One was Burrell and the other was Robinson. But these books were written by detractors. And on a side note, I was speaking to America's Jesuit general. And I was saying, well, I hope you don't mind me as a Rosicrucian, as a Freemason, asking you these questions. And he said, no, Alistair, what you have to understand, and you have to believe me, but the enemy of the Jesuits is exactly the same enemy that the Freemasons had, the Illuminati had, and the Golden Rosicrucians had. And the people who were against a worldwide revolution of not believing the nonsense we're told by authority. So on one level, you can see how Rosicrucianism and this business of being able to look at something and rationalize and work out what's fact, what's science, and what's absolute rubbish. And so we say to young Freemasons who are in their lodges, as I was, going, this is amazing, all these wonderful symbols. And you start asking questions, as I am that type of person, and people will go, oh, well, you need to speak to so-and-so. We'll see him at so-and-so lodge, but there's nobody in our lodge that can tell you anything about that, and certainly wouldn't like to put their neck out and answer those kind of questions. So we as an organization, the SRIA, all we say is, come and join us, because you'll meet people like you who will talk about anything, discuss anything, and a difference of opinion is the beginning of a conversation, not an argument. Now, I'm going to stop sounding as if I'm recruiting for the SRI, and I'm not. I'm not. It has its own problems. But my book, if I could just quickly flash through a few pages. Sure. So I have to go on share, don't I?
Yes.
Click. So my book's called The English Illuminati. Let's hope I can go through the slides. Okay, not that one. Try that one. Okay. So
you got a little pop-up there. You might want to get rid of the.
Now there is a real sign that is taken from the wax seals used by the Illuminati on the documents that I've found. I found 4 original Illuminati warrants in our archives, and blah blah blah. So this is the book I found. It's called, oh, that's the actor. So this is Westcott's Bits and Pieces. So here is an authentic original Illuminati document with some of their symbolism. And the one on the left, we'll see a few more times. But in the Norwegian hieroglyphs in the top, it's S-O, you think T-O-M. And another organization was set up based on using that logo. But in fact, I've uncovered what it was. But symbolism-wise, you've got the spirit, the point within a circle, so the universal circle on the outside. The triangular is your understanding in the inside, and the way to understand everything is through the heart. And you can see the rose around it, which is the secrecy put around things to veil the secrets. So the logo, Zotum, in fact, in German, you find on their lodge tracing boards, and it basically is north, east, south, and west. North, east, south, and west, as you can see on the right-hand side, but in Latin. And the T in the middle isn't a T, it's L. And we'll go on to see, here is another. So the book that Westcott wrote out in English is this book, The Mysteries of the Illuminati and the Histories of the Illuminati. And very famous, Elick Howe put the symbolism you can see on the back of one of his books, which he talked about Theodore Roos, who was the person I got involved in. But this is where it starts to get interesting, and where the archives of the SRIA is so useful. Here's a letter on the left written by Pappas to William Westcott saying, Westcott, I met Theodore Roos on a train coming back to Paris, and he wants you to join the Illuminati and would like your SRIA in Germany. This looks exactly like the first letter, and it is. And when I sent it to a Belgian frater to translate, he said, I've already translated this. I said, no, it's a different one. Look at the date. And basically, Westcott was on holiday when the first letter arrived, and he didn't reply to it. So Pappas was like, I see, you haven't replied to my first lesson. Here's a second letter telling you that here's the head of the Illuminati. And so correspondence between the Illuminati, the Martinists, the Order Martinist, and the Rosicrucians starts. And this all takes place in 1901. And my book very much is about all these orders. At the time, Westcott was the head of the Swedenborg Rite, and Pappas had already got the Swedenborg Rite from another guy called John Yarker. And what Theodore Roos wanted was not the Swedenborg Rite, but the ancient and primitive rite, which is known as Memphis Mizraim. And essentially, my book became so difficult to write because it was involving all these esoteric orders that people know about, and you can't just mention them without sort of going into any detail. The net result was there was an alliance between the Illuminati of Germany and the English in London, where the High Council agreed that they would have an alliance and that members would become there would be separate organization, an offshoot of the SRIA, which would be the Illuminati. Now, some people know about it. I didn't particularly know about it or give it any kind of credence, but that's what happened. Here is another authentic Illuminati document written by the then head or Grand Master of the Illuminati to Westcott, again, inviting him, in fact, agreeing that he wouldn't admit people into his order that weren't Freemasons already. And it was from an official Grand Lodge. So he had created in Germany a Grand Lodge. A guy called Gotthard Grenfer, who is a member of AQRS, one of the early founding members, he wrote an interesting paper on the 8 Grand Lodges that existed in Germany at the time. And in the bottom section, I prove that it was completely legal in Germany to create a Grand Lodge using their Club Act. Royce is in Germany. He then in writing confirms that he's been admitted into the SRIA by Westcott. So now we have a situation where the SRA didn't want anything to do with Les Order Martinistes of Pappas. Pappas then offered a higher grade, which is the Kabbalistic Rose Croix order, to Westcott, and he turned it down. In the meantime, what not many people knew was that Pappas was made an Illuminati for France. So he was the head of the French Illuminati. The German Illuminati wants the Swedenborg Rite, the Memphis Mizraim, he wants the SRIA. And my book goes into all the long details. So what started off as a book about the history of the Illuminati turned into this incredible web of the exchanging of documents. And here is that red seal I mentioned earlier on one of the first warrants. And you can tell from the impressions that it's a very old seal. So they weren't using a new seal in 1901. Here's another document, this time from Dresden. Dresden is where I was invited by the Illuminati to come and join them. It took about 2 or 3 years for them to check me out to make sure what I was doing was right. But they did this because they could tell from my book that I had all the authentic information, and in my book hadn't revealed, I suppose, their secrets. This is Westcott's Regent warrant from Hamburg. So yet again, we're talking about different parts of Germany. And essentially by 1902, this is the movement of grades where you've got the Prussian Illuminati in black at the bottom there trying to get into England. John Yarker from Manchester is trying to get the ancient and primitive rite into Germany. Papus has been sort of blown off, really, and there's a very good story behind that. And on the right-hand side, the Society Rosicruciana in Anglia has opened colleges in India, South America, and has got quite an expansive program that didn't really come to much once Westcott died. But there was a lot going on, and so there's a lot in the book. Here are the ordinances. So all these documents I'm showing you were originally in our archives, but as you can see, they've moved to Quater Coronati's lodge, and I give a very good sound reason why this material was moved. But these are the ordinances of the Illuminati, the Minerval Lodge and how it's run. The Minerval degree is a wonderful thing, and I'll explain later. But also in the library at Great Queen Street in London are all the rituals that were used by the Masonic Illuminati, not the original Weishaupt Illuminati. And that's the big difference between the rituals in Joseph Wage's book, I can't remember, School of Wisdom, and the rituals that I found. The Illuminati were banned after 11 years on pain of death eventually. And by then, the Freemasons had decided they wanted this as a high degree. There weren't very many high degrees in Germany at the time. The French had a Grand Lodge, the English had a Grand Lodge, the Germans set up their own Grand Lodge with the guy that wrote the German rituals, can't remember his name, but based on the English originals. And there were other high ranking grades. But they didn't want anything to do with the highbrow stuff that was used by Weishaupt for 11 years. And so they created their own version with a guy called Nig. Anyway, Scottish Rite. And the difference between Wage's rituals and these rituals that were used is they had a Rosicrucian grade, which effectively is Rose Croix. The Germans don't have a separate word for Rose Croix. They call it Rosicrucian, well, Rosenkreutzer, as it is here. So this shows the difference between the rituals. They'd included the Rose Croix, the 18th degree, if you like, in their set of rituals. They had a synod grade, which is their priestly grade. These are some of the people involved: Westcott on the left, Yarker in the middle, and Royce on the right. This is Papus's headquarters on the left, and the front door of his lodge room. So Papus was not a regular Freemason. He joined the order on the right, which is one of the Order France. I can't remember. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, my book covers the Society of Eight, the Fratres Lucis, the Ancient and Primitive Rite, the Memphis Mizraim, OTO, Kabbalistic Rose Croix, and the Automatonists. All of these were involved in what was going on in 2 years in London. And that's what I wrote my book about. So if you're interested in any of those, you need to read the book.
Well, that's a good point for a break to ask some questions there. You covered a lot of stuff. And it's interesting, Alistair, if I could say that I myself wrote a paper for Virginia Research Lodge 2 years ago now. And it was actually that paper led to us having unstated meetings, which is why I think it's relevant. I wrote a paper on the Grand Lodges of France because I sat down. I was trying to say, I want to write a paper. Well, I actually set out to say, let me go document, because on our website we have all of the Grand Lodges in America. Originally, it was all of the mainstream or state Grand Lodges. I've since added the Prince Hall Grand Lodges, but basically each state has a Grand Lodge here. And I said, well, let me go out and get all of the Grand Lodges in the rest of the world. And while I'm at it, I'll look at Supreme Councils because I'm in Scottish Rite. And I naturally assumed, well, there's only there's the North and South Scottish Rite Supreme Councils and the Prince Hall ones. And then there's probably a few out there in the world. And then it turns out there's almost as many Supreme Councils for Scottish Rite as there are Grand Lodges, which threw me for a loop. So I said, well, it'd be cool to go and say, because like a typical newly searching brother trying to find an answer, I assumed every country in the world, this is what we tell new members, right? every state in America has a Grand Lodge, and every country in the rest of the world has a Grand Lodge. That's why we're different. I naturally assumed there's only one Grand Lodge in England, in France, in Germany. And I started digging around and compiling a list of all the supreme councils in the world. And then I realized that there is no way you could write a paper to list all of the Grand Lodge. My goal was, let me write a paper. There's no way you can write a paper that would list all of the Grand Lodges and supreme councils in the world. You could, but it'd be on par with, here's all of the famous Masons in America. And I could read off 300 names, and you'd be bored to tears by the time I finished reading it, because I'd only have time to read off, John Wayne and Red Skelton and Ernest Borgnine. And I just simply listing the names, it's just too much information. It's not interesting. So I said, screw it. We'll go write a paper on France. And I set out to write a paper on the Grand Lodges of France. And it was really good paper. I really was happy to do it. I finished it for 2020 when Dennis was master of our lodge, and he had asked me to come back to the research lodge and give a paper in August. And then COVID hit. And before this, I'd already said, damn it, I want to give this paper, but I got to wait till August of 2020 to give it. And I don't feel right giving it anywhere but in the research lodge that asked me to give it. So I said, let me go write another paper based on that, and I'll go give that somewhere else instead. So I wrote a paper about the rites. I called it From Swedish to Scottish. I wanted to cover all the various rites in Europe. And I missed a few, like Memphis Mizraim. But I talked about the Swedish rite and the ancient rite and the reform. I can't remember the names of all of them, but basically there's about 20 rites that I found. And I wrote a nice paper about that and gave that several places. And that was my part 2. I finally got to give part 1 in Research Lodge, but I had to give it online because COVID wouldn't let us meet. So we started our unstated meetings with me giving the part number 1 when I'd already given part 2 several times. So I've given them both now. Point is, I missed Memphis Mizraim altogether. I didn't even hear about it in my research. And then I've heard about the Rosicrucianism. I've heard about Illuminati. John Meek, who we both know, who introduced us, he told me about the Martinists, and I've been begging him, find me somebody who's a Martinist to come give a talk about that. But as you're saying it, it's like there's all of these different bodies all over Europe that are unrelated, but yet everybody wants to join. I'm in this, I want to join that. I'm in this and this, and I want to. So they all kind of, the same men want to belong to all of these groups at once, and they're all pushing in different directions. We want the Illuminati affiliated with the Rosicrucianisms. We want the Masons affiliated with Memphis. Is that a fair assessment, that all these different people pulling, saying we need to be this way, we need to tie into them?
Oh, I've got 3 answers to that. My first answer is I'm not a badge collector, although I've ended up in a lot of these organizations, some of which you probably haven't realized exist.
Yeah.
And that's because the SRIA, as I said, attracts people to them. And, members of my study group were stolen by the Golden Dawn. They were stolen by the Martinists. They were stolen by the Fellowship of the Rosy Cross. They were stolen by, here's one for you. Very good, nice grade. Spiritual Knights, which of Lubkin, which is the Russian Freemason and Rosicrucian stroke Martinist. Full stop. In the SRIA, they ended up 2 groups. There was one group of people who were like a research lodge before there were research lodges. And what they did was they had got all the rituals of these different orders. I mean, there are at least 2 Swedenborg Rite setups. There are about 5 or 6 different Memphis Mizraim organizations. Anyway, they set up this organization, a study group, so that they could rehearse as an amusement for those people there things like the Order of the Essenes, the Order of the Old Man, That's right, the Assassins, the Order of the Assassins. And the idea was those people who were interested, like yourself, could come along to something like that. They could actually take part in a ceremony, become admitted, get a certificate. And the idea was to anthropologically keep these old rituals going, not in a Grand Lodge way, although strangely enough, they did end up creating their own list of Grand Masters of this and Grand Masters of that, to which I got very fed up with. It just seemed, jobs for the boys. What's the point? I mean, the point is, I think that a lot of these rituals have a message. And what I say to my students is, okay, tell me what Freemasonry is about. Tell me what Mark Masonry is about. Tell me what the Order of Erie is about. Tell me what Knights Templar in England's about. Tell me what the Illuminati means. And I want a one-sentence answer. Because if you've been in these organizations for hundreds of years and you don't know what they're about, what is the point in joining another one if you haven't worked out what the last one's about?
Do you get any answers? Do you ever get an answer?
So I'm very much one of those people that asks those awkward questions because I can, and because I can sometimes, not always, I don't know the answer to everything, but sometimes I can give the answer to them. But coming to the Illuminati, which we touched on, if you know anything about the Illuminati, there's been a couple of television programs that are not bad, they're not correct, but they were first banned just before the French Revolution, as all Freemasonry and the Golden Rosicrucians there. So the Golden Rosicrucians were the Catholics, and the Protestants were the Golden. The Catholics were the Illuminati, the Golden Rosicrucians were the Protestants, and Freemasonry was meant to be non-religious of any kind. Anyway, banned in 1780. And what happened, right? So what happened now, I know for book 3, that they went underground. And if I was saying to you, Christopher, I want you to stop, something terrible happened in America and it's illegal now for Freemasons to meet. And you were told, Christopher, I don't want you to meet anymore in lodge. So I don't want a lodge meeting to take place anymore. Your Grand Lodge has been closed. I guarantee that you would do something like carry on having Zoom meetings, perhaps have study meetings, or what they called it in Germany was reading societies. So what happened in 1785 was in Germany, they started forming reading societies, and we're going to read books and we're going to talk about this. We won't admit any new Masons or new Illuminati, but we will carry on because we're reading about it.
Absolutely.
And so they effectively went underground and created all these reading societies and study groups, as we call them now, until after the French Revolution, after the end of another war, where things in Europe were different, and they quietly started forming lodges. Generally speaking, there were less of them because a lot of the high-ranking Illuminati, Golden Rosicrucians, and Freemasons were all, killed in these wars. A lot of them, because they were that kind of person. The Knights Templar. Well, why wouldn't I be in a war if I'm so into Knights Templar, for example? And this happened to them after the First World War. So my book was written in about 1901, 1902. They had emerged again after this period of being banned in Europe, but they were very, very secretive because of what happened in the French Revolution, what happened to them in Bavaria. And no sooner had they quietly come back out of hiding than the Second World War completely devastated them, because they turned on each other. The story of the Grand Lodge and what happened during the Second World War and who did what is amazing. But I think in Holland there was a special concentration camp for German Freemasons, who was anybody who they thought was a Freemason. They chucked him in the camp and accused him of being a Freemason. And a number of them were burned with the Jews as well. So there was a lot going on, and they went underground again. And they really haven't emerged since the Second World War, because Freemasonry was reintroduced by the Americans who were stationed in Berlin, and the English in their quarter, and the French in their quarter. And so just as there was in Germany 8 Grand Lodges in the 1900s, there are now 8 Grand Lodges in Germany, including one for mixed women. So they've got to make, and they're essentially, and full stop.
Okay.
Full stop. Martinism, the Golden Rosicrucians, and the Illuminati had very small circles. I have been informed that a large lodge of Illuminati is 9. It's almost a maximum. Most lodges or circles were 3 or 4. And so what you in reality have had is 3 or 4 people associated with one very famous German Grand Lodge, very famous German lodge in a city. And they have over the years selected people to be an Illuminati within that lodge without anybody in the lodge knowing about it. And so it's been a secret cadet scheme. You're a good guy. We'll give you a month or a year or 2 testing. And then if you're worthy, we will admit you into the Illuminati. And the same with the Golden Rosicrucians. If you were slightly that way inclined, you would go that way. Full stop. Just to add, I think the Illuminati is so like the Rosicrucian movement that I'm a member of, that in my discussions with these people, I've said, I've got thousands of Rosicrucians, Freemasons, who would be ideal for the Illuminati, but they don't need to join another order. And in my head at the moment is, I don't need another order. And if I get as much out of the Rosicrucian movement as I do or would out of the Illuminati, I would only join it or start it up again myself if I wanted another badge. And strangely enough, the Illuminati don't give you badges. All the regalia belongs to the lodge, so you never have your own personal regalia, and you're not charged a penny for admission. It's free. And this is the same for the Martinists, and this is the same for the Golden Rosicrucians. To distinguish themselves from money-grabbing Freemasons of old, they charge nothing, and you don't get lots of badges to wear.
Okay. I wanted to call on Michael. He had his hand up for a bit, if you still got a question.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to ask you, sir. It's a name that I wanted to ask you about. Christian Rosicrucians, if I don't know if I'm mentioning that name, if I'm pronouncing it correct. And the question I wanted to ask you, sir, was: is there any connection with your Hanonism and the Rosicrucian movement, dealing with the guys that were coming from the Holy Lands that pretty much spread it throughout Europe? I know that Christian Rosicrucians was coined. I'm not sure if I'm correct in what I'm about to say, but he was coined to be in the creator of the Rosicrucian movement and order. Does that have any connection to Johannine? Because those guys were believed to have, once they had broken up, and many of the guys started to migrate to different parts of Europe and create different types of orders. Is there any connection to that with Rosicrucianism?
It's a very good question, and I hope I can answer it. If I have time, I can tell you exactly what happened there. But Christian Rosicrucians was mentioned in one of the manifestos, and he is a allegorical character that traveled on what people call the Great Transverse through Europe and to the Far East and back again to learn knowledge, and lots of young princes were sent on this journey to learn these things and to come back enlightened. He wasn't directly connected with the Knights Templars, but there is a story there, a very important story, and the Holy Land story. But there's two stories there. There's the Holy Land story and the Martin Luther Rosicrucian story. So I'll give that one quickly. We've all heard of Martin Luther, who is the person that started the Protestant Reformation. Now, the Protestant Reformation is exactly the same period in time as the Rosicrucian Enlightenment. And the Protestant Reformation didn't start with Martin Luther nailing 85 or 95 points on the 95, is it? Thank you. I get corrected every time, and that's my dyslexia for you. I'll carry on saying 85 to hear 95 back from someone. But the most important thing was Martin Luther didn't change European history forever with those 95 things on the door. It was because he went to the Grand Master of the Teutonic Knights and said, I've got two things to suggest. One is peace in Poland, and that will only happen if the Teutonic Knights give up their castles and land and leave Polish land. And the other thing is, you've got to break away from the Holy Roman Church. And Martin Luther did it by a stroke, and it's not really mentioned. Wikipedia has it, if you dig into Wikipedia on Martin Luther. But what Martin Luther simply said to the last Grand Master of the Teutonic Knights is, get married. Get married. Break your vow of chastity. Get married. Get all your knights to get married, and you will be rejected by the Roman Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. You will start a new order. And anybody who has done a little bit of history will know that the Teutonic Knight regalia and symbolism is the symbolism used in the Supreme Council's 33rd degree. They're not Knights Templar symbols. They are Teutonic Knight symbols. And what happened, well, I think the Grand Master of the Teutonic Knights was a little bit shrewder than he may be given credit for, because he allowed Martin Luther to marry first. So 1 year after this agreement, this discussion between the two, Martin Luther married. And of course, he turned his back on the Roman Catholic Church. All his priests were able to marry. They were rejected by Catholicism. And the year after Luther got married, the Grand Master got married and all his knights got married as well. And what happened was Prussia was created as an exact result of that, because the army behind the Prussian Empire were the Teutonic Knights. The religion behind Protestants were Martin Luther, the Calvinists, and several other orders. And so this was all going on at the same time as the Christian Rosenkreuz story allegedly started. So I think that covers everything except Johnanism. And I think I don't know too much about it. It's not something we deal with very much in England. It's more a European and an American thing. But I found a fabulous ritual for Knights Templar, but it was for the Knights of the Teutonic Order, and they had behind them Johnnonitism, if you like, and St. Mary of Magdalene, I think is. But anyway, they were rituals from the troubled island of I forget its name now. But, yeah.
Are you able to share that? Are you able to share that, sir, or you cannot share that?
The name of the order in sorry, what would you like to know? I had difficulty pronouncing. I had difficulty pronouncing some words, and I'm embarrassed to say whatever word it was I was trying to say. I can't remember it.
It's all right, brother. The ritual you were just mentioning, is it something that is shareable, or you're not allowed to share that at all?
Oh yes, I mean it's a fascinating ritual. A frater came and gave me this very tiny little ritual book, said, Alistair, I'd like you to keep this. It's it's written by John Yarker in his handwriting, and it's about the Knights Templar, but it's not the Knights Templar we know. It's the Teutonic Knights. And all the history comes back to the island. It's been split in half. It was the famous French revolution, slave revolution I can never remember the name of the two parts. The French have one name for it. I can't remember, in the Caribbean. Can anybody help me here?
Is this during the time of Stephen Morin? Is this during the?
Yes, it's a period of Morin. So, and in fact, these are the rituals that Pasquale probably had when he was stationed in this island.
I'm trying to remember, sir. The Order of the Royal Secret?
Well, that's the 25 degrees before the other 7 were added. Yes, and would be part of Morin and the other guy who's...
Is it the Franken manuscripts? Is it the Franken manuscripts?
Right, so they're separate. The rituals I've got, I'm happy to share. I'll send them to Charles.
Okay,
I've done a little bit of them. It's but they're the Teutonic Knight rituals of their Knights Templar.
Okay, thank you.
And they're French in origin.
Okay.
All right. Are there more questions on this? Do we have a third segment, Alistair, or did we cover everything we were going to cover? Or do you think we've covered it well? I tried to break us up into 10-minute segments, but we've kind of gone long. I do intend to start breaking up our YouTube videos into smaller segments so they're more palatable for the audience. But were there other questions about this specific segment from anyone?
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
Out how to raise my hand in Zoom, but you made
just do that.
Okay. You made the comment that you should be able to describe what your organization and its purpose in one sentence. How would you do that with Rosicrucianism versus Freemasonry?
I can do that. So Rosicrucianism is a matter of rationalizing a subject and breaking it down into its relevant parts. Freemasonry, let's talk about Freemasonry. Freemasonry is, I'll tell you a secret about Freemasonry. Freemasonry is about love. And I say this to people and they say, what are you talking about? Freemasonry is designed to get more love into men, with the object of, the world would be a better place if there was more love in men. And those that challenge me, I say, well, fraternity, which is a well-known phrase, is giving love to people in your workspace or colleagues, but giving them the same love as you give your family. And charity, the other predominant moral in Freemasonry, is all about giving strangers love. So I'd say to anybody who asks me what Freemasonry is about, it's about getting more love into men.
You can argue with that, right?
Mark Masonry is, if you listen, the stone that gets lost will never be forgotten. Knights, I could go on. Knights Templar, I do this, to humiliate some people, but it's not my intention.
I think it's more valuable, to put somebody on the spot and make them come up with a sentence rather than you just simply give us all the ones you come up with.
Yeah, exactly. I know nothing.
I like to tell people that we have an expression called an elevator speech here in America. And an elevator speech is where you walk onto say you're in a big office building somewhere, and you walk onto the elevator and there is the CEO of your company or the head of your department or whatever, or someone you would very much want to bring in as a customer or a vendor, what have you. So you're alone in this elevator for the next 30 seconds and you have a captive audience. What do you want to say to them? And it can be on any topic. I had to figure out an elevator speech for SharePoint because I had a admiral or somebody walk through my spaces when I was working at the shipyard, and I had to explain to him what SharePoint was in a way that he would understand it and walk away and understand not only what SharePoint was, but what my job was that I did there. But I think we should have elevator speeches for Masonry. You should be able to talk to somebody in 30 seconds and explain to them what Masonry is, why it's important to you, and why they would want to be interested in joining it if that's something they're interested in. And I think it's a good mental exercise, because if you can't explain your job, let's say you're part of a very large company and you run into your CEO and he says, well, Alistair, what do you do here? And you can't tell him in 30 seconds, where he walks away like, well, we can never let him go because what he does is important. If you can't do that, you can be in trouble next round of firings. But it's important to force you to get basically to take everything you're contagious, Alistair. I can't think of the word now. To boil down what it is, something that's complex, into 30 seconds, and to state it clearly. So it's a good mental exercise for everybody to do, is elevator speeches. So anyhow,
if you'd like something slightly new and something I'd love to share, as somebody who's been running study groups for a number of years now, people say, oh, but Alistair, I can't write a paper. And writing a paper is something more to me than you might think. The paper I'm looking for people to write for the first time is something that includes them in it. And the most successful and most interesting paper are papers where you get a bit of that person out in the subject, which I think I've done today, deliberately. But when I've managed to get someone to write about the French Revolution, let's say, the bit about the French Revolution that's the most interesting is how they say that their long-lost great-grandfather did this, that, and the other in the French Revolution, and suddenly the audience is into the paper.
Right.
And what I've found is that writing that first paper, I asked for about Rosicrucian subjects, but writing about the first paper and getting it out, everybody has a mental block or a writing block until they've written their first paper. And their first paper can't be on, oh, let's talk about round the new square wheels in Germany that help electric cars go faster. No, it's got to be a paper that's of interest to you to get your whatever it is out. And once I found that people have written their first paper that includes a bit of them and the subject they love, you can't stop them. And so many of these people that I've managed to get to write these first papers have then gone on to write many, many books. Many books.
Interesting. I've done something similar. I've had people like Robert actually have asked me, how do I get started writing a research paper? And I say the easiest way to get rolling on a research paper, because there's so much in Masonry, there's so many topics, so many things you could write about. And I get ideas all the time and I just put them in a long list. So whenever I have time to write them, I have over 100 topics I could write about, and I just keep adding to the list without writing too many, but I keep adding. But I say, ask yourself a question about Masonry that you want the answer to. Like, why did the stewards have staffs and never use them? Something like that. Some question that you would ask, and maybe you've asked, and like you said, well, you're going to go have to ask so-and-so in this lodge. You can't ask. No one here has the answer to that. So ask a question out loud about Masonry that you don't think you've gotten an answer to, and then go research it and get enough information that you feel that you've actually answered the question to your satisfaction, and make the paper about that. So by the time you're done giving the paper, you introduce the question. People in the audience will say, yeah, why do the stewards have staffs? And by the time you're done, you've actually answered the question and say, that's why. And if you can do that just once, you're prepared to write more papers, because you're answering, you're done because you can read it and say, now I have the answer to my own question. And that's a good way to look at it.
I completely agree with you. It's a very good synopsis of what needs to be done. And of course, what you've described really is write the paper for you. Yes. Someone's asked you that question, and you've sat down and you've answered it to your satisfaction, and that's how you get a paper out. Plus, quote all your references.
Oh, absolutely. Any other questions?
I see we've got Evangelist. I can't pronounce his name. One of our members is online, or was.
Oh, he was. Yes, he dropped.
He's gone.
He's gone. It's
Probably he hasn't written a paper for me yet. He knew I was after him.
I saw the name. I was like, okay, I don't know that fella, but yeah. But it's
Yeah, I've got a terrible reputation. I'm not backward in coming forward. So I get my papers out of my men.
I'm not backward in coming forward. I like that. Damn, I had a quick comeback to him leaving us, and I forget. See again, Alistair is contagious here. I'm forgetting names. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. The minute you looked for that person you knew was in the audience, he disappeared. So you can't.
Brian's gone as well. Oh, there he is.
Brian's still here. As soon as you look to identify that he's here, he's gone for the rest of us to look at. It's like, Heisenberg was speeding along on Interstate 95 at one time, and a state trooper pulls him over, and he says to Heisenberg, "Do you know how fast you were going?" And Heisenberg says, "No, but I know exactly where I am."
Okay. Yes. No, it's fascinating.
Physics humor. Come on, folks. You can't get that in just any reading society. I guess they're calling us a reading society just to confuse people.
So, I can't remember his name now, but I will send you. Was it Michael who asked the question about
he's still here.
Caribbean island? I will blindly send it to you, Chris, and if you could forward it on to Michael.
Certainly. You were trying to think of the name of the island?
Yeah, come on, guys.
That's what would describe the island.
It's cigar shaped and it's in two pieces, and they both hate each other. And it was where if you put into Google Caribbean War of the Slavery uprising, it's where France lost thousands and thousands of troops.
I'm going to go. That ain't it. That's not.
Are you talking about Jamaica?
No. Oh, we'll all kick ourselves when we.
Oh, I'm showing the
Haiti.
Haiti and Dominican Republic.
Dominican Republic. So
That's it.
The French called it something else. They called it Saint Dominica, didn't they? Yeah, they called it Saint Dominica.
There is a Dominica.
There is a Dominica, yes. Yep.
And there's the Saint Martin. But Haiti and Dominican Republic are the one. So, is the one island it's two countries that I know of.
Yeah, and that's where that's where Pasquale, the famous person who created the Martinist movement, allegedly.
Okay.
But he took his own version. Pasquale's father had a version of Rose Croix that he took to the island, and a lot of Freemasonry came from that island during the conflict with the French there, and mainly because of all the regiments, and that's where. A lot of Freemasonry was spread by the regiments in different nations. I mean, not just the French, not just the Irish, not just the Scots, but it was their regiments that spread Freemasonry.
Interesting. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. It's 11:15.
Is it Haiti and Dominica?
Yes, that's what it was. That's what we decided.
Dominican Republic, yeah.
Dominican Republic. So. We could certainly go on all day, but I want to go. We've covered a lot of things here, and I think I may overload people if you keep going. And anybody have any more questions before we wrap up?
I believe that island is called Hispaniola.
Yes, they called it Hispaniola, didn't they? Yes.
Was that another name for that same island? Okay. Well, I do believe, Alistair, we'll have you back on. We'll try. We try. I changed things up on him at the last minute, so if this seems a little chaotic, it was almost intentional.
And I'm very humble enough to apologize for the mistake made previously, where I wasn't looking at the emails correctly.
Oh no, that's quite all right. Yes, we had Alistair was going to be our guest speaker back in like October, I think, and then he didn't show. So I had to pull out a paper out of my hat and read it instead. And it went over well, but I've tried to have people as backups now to say, okay, if my speaker don't show, I need to have somebody ready to read one, because as much as I like talking, you've noticed, I don't want to be the one reading a paper here. I want to have somebody else. So I have a couple of people I've asked to start attending and have a paper ready in case we have to go to them. But unfortunately, I do not have a speaker lined up for our next meeting. We had a guy cancel on the 13th, and then we had our meeting on the 20th, and then we got to this one. So unfortunately, I'm behind. And something I pointed out to our worshipful master and the members of our lodge, we need more involvement from the members of Virginia Research Lodge. And I need to have more people involved in this process, because if I'm too busy, as I have been lately, I'm not moving the ball. I have never failed to get a paper out. I've been giving out research papers every week for 3 years, and I've never failed to get a paper out every week. But there have been times when we haven't had these unstated meetings, because the main problem is lining up speakers. And I think we're going to try some different formats here. We're going to start doing like more panel discussions, because the hard part, it seems, is to find more speakers, because I don't want to keep repeating the same people endlessly. You know, I have you guys back every 6 months or so is great, but you know, I want to have a wider variety of speakers, and I've burned through all the ones I have, I guess. So I'm going to keep looking. So I will announce on Facebook when our next meeting will be, but hopefully we'll at least have one in June. But I normally like to say, here's the next one, and do a teaser for that, but I don't have anyone lined up for once. So I need to get on my stuff. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. I will tease that we are looking into other forms of social media. A member of our lodge, Robert, remember we were talking to Joshua Payne, our senior deacon, and I talked a bit at our last meeting, and he recommends getting on Instagram and Reddit and several other social media platforms and kind of pushing Virginia Research Lodge and just research in general in Virginia. We're not just about our research lodge. We host this, but any of our 5 research lodges, any members of the Virginia Research Lodges are welcome to join us. This is all about spreading Masonic education. The Virginia Research just gives me a stone to stand on to start doing all of this stuff. So it's welcome to anyone. It's not exclusively us by any means, but we're the one doing it the most. So if more Virginia brothers want to get involved, you're welcome to join us. But I really do need to, I keep asking our officers and our members to get more involved, because the more people we have helping out, the more we can get done. And it's not relying on me to make it happen, because if I'm too busy, we don't happen. And that's a precarious position to be in. But I do enjoy doing this, and I'll keep doing it as long as I can, but a little help would make it smoother. That way I know it'll continue if I'm out of action for a couple of weeks, and I can focus on pain work, I guess, which, just keeps getting in the way of things. Anyway, any other questions? Thank you very much, Alistair. I really enjoyed it. We hope to have you back again.
Thank you for the offer, and thank you for your time.
Watch this space for announcements about Instagram and Reddit and whatever other social media I get around to putting us on. So we will keep, we will try out other areas, shorter videos to draw in more people. I may have to sit down and make a few short videos to put out there just to kind of gin up our audience, because not everyone wants to watch an hour and a half or 2-hour video. Go figure. Some people do, and good on you. But we want to try and break them up into shorter chunks and get more people involved and get more people watching, because I just want to spread Masonic education. That's all I'm about doing here, is getting more people exposed to Masonic education, getting more young Masons interested in learning more about Masonry. And there's more to it than your lodge meeting and reading the minutes and voting on, your next spaghetti dinner, whatever it is you're doing that's so important. Anyhow, any parting comments, any questions for Alistair or anybody else? Any comments before we break? No. Robert, you want to unmute? You're the worshipful. You want to say something
Okay, yeah. I just thank you, Alistair. It's brought a lot of questions for me that I'm going to have to start, as you say, put yourself in that and just do it. Because there are different areas that I'm interested in looking at and seeing how it may be me, that I need to get myself in the paper to get it out. Thank you.
Leopold Engels, have you ever heard of him?
So I missed the first bit.
Leopold Engels wrote a book in 1909, History of the...
Oh, Leopold Engels, yes.
Yeah. Any good?
Leopold Engels, he was rejected by the Illuminati. The story of Leopold Engels is in my book, big time, because it started. So a guy called Theodore Roos, who came to England, became an English Freemasonry, and went back to Germany because he was a correspondent. He's the one that set up the Grand Lodge of the Illuminati in 1901, and Engels decided that he'd join them and then take over. And I didn't realize how well. You probably got the same thing in the States as in Germany, and the states they have in Germany, in that Dresden, which is where Engel was from, is the historical grand lodge of all grand lodges outside of other places in Germany. Dresden thinks they are the bee's knees when it comes to Freemasonry and all the esoteric orders. So he literally took over this. One of those certificates I showed was from Engel. He started issuing warrants after Theodore Roos, saying that he knew more about the Illuminati than the guy who started it off. He probably did. But what I have found is that he tried to join one of the lodges I have been involved in. And the Illuminati said, look, it's all very well. You think you know an awful lot about the Illuminati, but you don't, and we're not going to admit you into our order. And he wrote a 360-page book called The History of the Illuminati. But this was something like 12 years after the one that Westcott hand wrote, and his book is full of nonsense. I mean, it's got a lot of historical detail and pictures of Weishaupt's grave and all these other things, but apparently for Germans it doesn't give a lot that people can't find around the place. But interesting man, Leopold Engel. Yes. My spell check kept saying changing it to angel.
If anyone wants to read that book, in my Facebook group. So
all right, then.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Alistair. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And I look forward to seeing you all at the next one. Again, like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube in one of these several pieces I've chopped this into. And I'll look forward to seeing you all at the next unstated meeting. And hopefully I'll be announcing what that is and when it is soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.